Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, we praise the Judge of Truth as we gather to pay tribute and lay to rest our dear Rose Innenberg. Let's begin with Psalm 121. Esai enai el haharim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. Al yitein namot raglecha, al yanum shomrecha. Hine lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka v'yarech b'layla. Adonai yishmarcha mikol ra, yishmoret nafshecha. Adonai yishmar tzedcha v'uecha, me'ata v'ad olam. I lift up mine eyes unto the mountains, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Lord is your guardian. He is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you from all harm. He will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. Death has taken our dear Rose Innenberg. Friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Rose's love that united many, many people in life, and which death cannot sever. For her companionship that was shared along life's path, and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind, which brought joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all of these and more, we give our thanks to God. It is a time of grief. It is a time of sadness. And so we listen once again to the voice of our sacred scriptures from Sefer Tehillim, from the book of Psalms. It brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Let us recite the 23rd Psalm of the English together, please. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This morning we have a couple of eulogies. First, Louis is going to come forward and talk about his mom, and then Shlomo, Brian, come forward and talk for the grandchildren. Louis, please. Take your time, man.
First of all, thank you all for coming. Thank you so much, especially, people, everybody who came in from out of town or whatever. I mean, thank you so much for that. I'm Louis Innenberg. She was my mom, and I also want to thank Beth for all. You can't be bawling when I'm not even bawling yet. And I thank you for all your help and support and all the stuff you helped me with my mom all these years is great. Dave and Annie, I want to thank you for all your stuff you're doing with the Shiva and everything. Emily, if she's wherever she is, helping with the Shiva. I want to thank Bart and all the people here. And, of course, Rabbi Matt, who's a great guy and a great rabbi and a great shortstop, too. So,
when I could move.
So anyhow, my mom was a great mom, and she and my dad got married in 1957 after a incredibly brief 5-month when they met, and then my dad, I guess, got this job in Cleveland. They had nothing to do with Cleveland. All of a sudden, he said, "I got this job in Cleveland." They were in New Jersey, and he said, "You want to get married and move to Cleveland?" And so they did, and they came here. They knew like nobody, and except like had one cousin here. So and so they came here, and in 1960 they had me, and in 1962 they had my sister, and so we had this like little family of the four of us, and that was it. And so they had a pretty traditional marriage. Of my mom did all the housekeeping and everything, and my dad worked, but together they raised me and my sister. But what was pretty amazing about my mom, for starters, I guess, is that in addition to the housekeeping, she worked all these years. She was a bookkeeper or whatever. And actually, at the time when we were growing up, she was working for this chain of stores, of American Greetings gift stores, and raising us. And it was a great childhood. And I was thinking, trying to think of like sort of the quintessential thing about that. And what I came up with was since they like knew nobody and they hardly had, they didn't have much of a social life. So like Saturday nights, the four of us would sit in our den, and my mom would make a special snack, and we would watch. I'm sure by this crowd, you probably know, we would be sitting there watching the CBS all night, which I remember as like All in the Family and MASH and Mary Tyler Moore and Bob Newhart and Carol Burnett. Like 8 to 11, we would sit there, and it was great. So anyhow, we grew up, and my sister and I came back from school, and started family, got married, and started families, and then our little family of 4 now was now 10. So that was our big family of 10, and so there were now grandchildren, and my mom was now working at Belfair along with my dad, and so and it was a great time, and again, the thing that one thing that I was thinking that stuck out for me was my mom had become a great cook, and we would have these family dinners. We had a lot of family dinners of the 10 of us. And each of them came with like a specialty food that was just killer. So like we had Jewish holiday dinners where my mom made amazing chicken soup with homemade kreplach, and we would have Chinese New Year dinners, and she made amazing spare ribs, and then we had Italian dinners, and she made this great tomato meat sauce, spaghetti sauce, and then the summer we would have cookouts, and she made amazing potato salad, and she did not hold back on the pepper, and then the pièce de résistance was in December, like right now, because like yesterday was my dad's birthday, and my sister's birthday was also in December. and she would make leg of lamb, which was like ridiculous, and she would stuff all this garlic into it, and we just loved it. So anyhow, it was a great period of time, and until 2008, and my dad died, and so basically at that point I was thinking, how the hell is this going to happen? How is she going to go forward? I made it past 10%, right? How is she going to do this? Whatever. And amazingly, so much to her credit, she reinvented herself, and besides now she was working at the roofing company, and but then she started volunteering. She started volunteering at the Maltz Museum, which basically was licensed for her to be a greeter and play 6 degrees of separation with everybody who came in the door. And for someone who wasn't born and raised here, I don't know how she connected with all these people, but she did that, and she started playing Maj, and she met this new group of ladies, and was doing that, and she continued to thrive, and then. And then 4 years later, my sister died. And again, I'm wondering, how the hell you got through this? But I don't know. Somehow she did. She just became more and more independent, and somehow thrived until she had amazing health. Unlike my dad was a mess. He had all sorts of crap happen to him, but my mom had nothing until the age of 90, and then all the shit started happening, and to coming to today. So anyhow, one more thing is that if I can get through this one, she a couple of months ago I was talking to her, and we would go to visit her at Menorah, and every single time we would walk in, we'd go up to her and we'd say, we'd say hi, and she'd say, "What are you doing here?" And we'd say, "We came to see you." And so one time she said to me, why do I deserve to have you do this? And I said, because because you're my mom. And she said, "I like being your mom." So, Mom, I love being your son. And I'm going to miss you.
And to those words spoken as a prayer, let us say Amen. Right. Shlomo.
I'm Brian Innenberg. Rose was my grandmother, and I'm going to speak on behalf of all of the grandchildren, and I'll give my writing credit to my sister Carrie, who wrote this speech out for us. So, and I'll try and keep it together a little bit. I think I can hold it together a little bit better than my dad, but that's his way. All right. Growing up, Grandma and Grandpa made a big effort to be a big part of our lives, which we were very fortunate for. We had a lot of family dinners, obviously that my dad had mentioned, mostly at my grandparents' house. Again, great cook. She would, I think, he mentioned the quality, but it was all about the quantity too. As he mentioned, we had about, 10 people in our family, and I think that she made for 50. I don't know who those other 40 people were, but so yeah, obviously mentioned some of her really good things, but everything she made was delicious, and sometimes she would enlist us as grandchildren to help cook with her. Every Rosh Hashanah, we always looked forward to helping her make the homemade crepe block, which was always really fun. And on New Year's, we would help her make brunch every New Year's. And what helping her make brunch means is we watched her make pancakes, and we waited for her to make an imperfect one, and we would get to eat that before the brunch started. We also really loved playing games with our grandma and grandpa. That was definitely some of our best interactions. They taught us how to play bridge and other card games. And our grandma would laugh every time one of us got a good hand because we would get very excited. Not very good bluffers, apparently. But as we got older, our family started a tradition. We would play a game after our family dinners called the family game. The way it's supposed to be played is everyone writes down a name of a celebrity or a well-known person. You throw them in a bowl, someone reads out the names, and then you basically go around and try and guess who wrote down what. And the last person standing wins. Somehow over the years, it turned into somewhat of a different game. Rather than putting down celebrities or well-known people, we would take mental notes throughout the dinner of all the things we talked about. And then you would write down making fun of something that came up during dinner. And so, everyone would write it down, and my grandma would request to be the reader so that she didn't have to come up with a name. And she would end up reading all these ridiculous jokes about family members, and everyone else would be laughing hysterically. And she was just shaking her head and that made it even funnier because she didn't really know what was going on sometimes. It wasn't really clear, if she didn't hear the jokes at dinner that were being referenced or if she just thought they were sort of ridiculous. But either way, it made the game even more entertaining than it really was. When she wasn't shaking her head, our grandma had an infectious laugh. She was always smiling and laughing, especially with her family. And I think that was one of the key themes for her, is her life really revolved around family. Her and Grandpa were inseparable, and as my dad mentioned, when she passed, we really weren't sure how well she was going to do. But she showed how strong she was, and she started her new life, doing the jobs and the volunteering and making new friends and playing games with them. And then, as my dad mentioned, she did it again when my aunt passed away, and she was able to pull herself up and do it again, which was, I think it showed her character and strength. And we were really lucky that she was so strong, and she stuck it out to the age of 94. And I think one of the coolest things was she was able to be here for the four of us original grandchildren. We'll call them the OGs, original grandchildren. When we got married, and she got to meet 6 of her great-grandchildren, which was a blessing. And her smile and fascination as she watched all the great-grandkids run around the house together is something we won't forget. Thank you, Grandma, for being such a big part of our lives. We promise to keep the family traditions that you and Grandpa created and keep the family close. Say hi to Grandpa and Aunt Sue for us. We miss you and love you. Thank you.
And also to those words of prayer, let us say Amen. So Louis emailed me some words that his mother had written. Rose wrote like her autobiography. So I get this thing and I'm trying to go through it. It's like, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the eulogy was became like 28 pages long. So the woman had a mind where she could remember all sorts of things. And a lot of good things, really good things. So we're here to remember our dear Rose Innenberg, Rocho Rezo Bat Eliezer Vasara. And we comfort one another and we support one another. And for the family, this is a tremendous support. She was the Energizer Bunny. She was always moving. She did everything fast. And this was the case for the overwhelming majority of her 94-plus years. As a girl in Seneca Falls, New York, she ran up and down the scrap metal heaps with her brothers because the family business was Kliansky scrap metal. And one of our old softball team jerseys, the Kliansky, I don't know how much they had to pay to sponsor us, but just a little bit. Yeah. It was probably commensurate with the number of victories we had back then, but just a little bit. But she would run up and down the heaps with her brothers. She would skin her knees. She was a tomboy. She didn't want to be left behind. She was family-oriented, and she was an excellent cook in her day, and she added salt to everything they said and pepper to everything. She was not shy about her opinions. She had many of what Beth called Rose-isms. She was very caring, and she was very accepting, and she was very embracing. She was gracious, and she rolled with it, which means namely the things that her children and grandchildren did. And we all know this. You have children, you just kind of got to roll with it sometimes. She was sentimental at times. She laughed a lot. She sent birthday cards to all the grandchildren, and that means all of the grandchildren. And she sent birthday cards to others too, and she underlined words for emphasis. And Louis told her she didn't have to write checks to put in the cards, but she did it anyway. She didn't really listen to him. And she planned ahead, because you never know what's going to happen. So there were times when she insisted on writing all the cards a whole year in advance. She was a loving daughter and sister and wife and sister-in-law and mother and grandmother and co-worker and friend. And her attitude and her behavior provide fitting illustrations for an upcoming Torah portion. Please check. In Exodus chapter 35, the Torah portion is Vayakhel. And our ancestors were commanded to bring materials for the construction of the tabernacle, which is a portable structure for worshiping God in the wilderness, as our ancestors schlepped through the wilderness for 40 years. So our ancestors were commanded to bring materials, and everything was going according to plan. The people brought materials, and they brought, and they brought, and they brought. For maybe the first time in history for a congregation's building fund, it was oversubscribed. They just kept bringing and bringing and bringing. So this was a problem because they were bringing too much. So finally, Moses had to proclaim, "Let no man or woman make further efforts towards gifts for the sanctuary." And so as we talk about Rose, and as you were talking about Rose last night, this is a beautiful reminder of this Torah portion, because in so many ways, not only did our ancestors not know when to stop, Rose did not know when to stop. She just didn't know when to stop. She was caring. She was generous. She was loving. You talked about the food. Enough for 10, she made for 50. She just didn't know when to stop. And thank God she didn't know when to stop, because that meant there was more than enough for everyone. Rose Kliansky was born July 23rd, 1930, in Seneca Falls, New York. Her parents, of blessed memory, Louis and Sarah. She was one of 4 children. She was the baby of 4. There was Harold, Chaim, David, and Rose. In Rose's own words, my father died in 1952. My mother was very lonely, and I was not happy there. I had considered moving back to New York and going back to college. However, we moved to Paterson, New Jersey, where my mother's sister and brother-in-law were living. We took an apartment near them, and my mother was somewhat happier. I took a job at the YWHA, Young Men's Hebrew Association, Young Women's Hebrew Association. That was, it wasn't the YMCA, it was YMHA for us. I was secretary to the executive director. It was a great place to work. The people were wonderful. I worked there about 5 years until my mother became ill and moved back to Seneca Falls. That was January 1957. Shortly after that, in March 1957, I met Dan Innenberg through one of my co-workers, Jerry Oken. The guy deserves credit. Jerry Oken, wherever he is. Dan was a social worker working at the Hackensack YMHA, and we were dating, and he went to a social work conference in Cleveland, and he accepted a job in Cleveland. He came back and told me, and I figured that was the end of the relationship. I was wrong. First, Dan suggested I move to Seneca Falls, which is closer to Cleveland, so we could still see each other. I agreed reluctantly. Fortunately, he thought about it again, and he called me to say, let's get married and move to Cleveland. I thought that was a much better idea, and I quote, I thought that was a much better idea. We were married in Seneca Falls on August 11th, 1957, approximately 5 months after we met. Our wedding was outdoors at the Armitage, which is no longer there in Seneca Falls, with a kosher dinner imported, along with the rabbi, from Rochester. There were 18 guests, and then she listed all 18 of the people, and the 17th and 18th person, she said, and Dan and me. Dan and I went to Cape Cod on our honeymoon, then to Cleveland. They shared a loving marriage of more than 50 years. At the time Dan passed, he died on January 1st, 2008. And they were blessed many times over. Something else that she wrote in the 28 pages is that her mother and father had a marriage where her mother would complain mostly about whatever her father did, whether it was business-wise or anything like this. And she wrote, and then there would be some times when she wouldn't talk with her to her father. It seemed like weeks, and this made her miserable. And she wrote down that she made sure that she would make sure not to do that when she got married. And true to her word, she wrote all sorts of things. She was happy. What a great thing. They moved to Cleveland. They lived in an apartment at Belfair. I think that was their first apartment. Fantastic. Okay, so blessed with many, many family members. Dan didn't see some of these, but we're going with your mom for the whole thing here. When I miss somebody, please correct me, okay? I wanted to write this all down. So we have 2 children, Louis and Susan. Susan, now blessed memory. Louis and Beth. And here we have all of the family through this part, right? We got Louis, we got Brian, and we have Carrie. Brian married to Allie. Carrie married to Patrick. And through Beth, we have, these are grandchildren, Stephanie and Emily, and then great-grandchildren, Charlotte and Teddy, and Brantley and Mackenzie. That's just there. Then we go over to Susan and David. Susan of blessed memory, then Jessica and Alex. Jessica and Alec, and Alex and Sarah, and great-grandchildren Skylar and Beckham. And then after Susan passed, David was lucky enough to find Annie, and Annie brought with her grandchildren Taylor and Zachary and Selby. So that makes 9 grandchildren, however you slice it, and 6 great-grandchildren. Is that everybody? Good. That means when I get to the house, I can eat. Good. She had a number of jobs as a bookkeeper and as a secretary, and she could keep things and people organized. Even her last days there at the hospice, they said she was, whether she was of relatively sound mind or whether she was delusional, they walk in and she's like trying to organize who should go here for this dinner and who should go. She was still organizing things, even in her weakened condition. It was deep inside her, running the family and organizing things. Oh, so Dan worked at Belfair for many years, and Rose worked there too for many years. They enjoyed seeing each other and being together. After Dan died on New Year's Day 2008, the kids didn't know how she was going to do, as you heard. And you know what? She became even more independent. As we are all too aware, the final days and weeks can be very difficult, extremely difficult. And it was not easy for Rose or for her loved ones. Blessedly, she was accompanied by Louie and Beth and Dave as she breathed her last. And she breathed her last on Shabbat, Saturday morning, somewhere around 4:24, 4:25, 4:30 in the morning at the Maltz Hospice. And she breathed her last, and now she's at peace. She's at peace. There's no more deterioration or discomfort or suffering. Just as Shabbat is a time of peace and rest, now so too for Rose. Our Jewish tradition teaches and believes that the soul returns to God, and that now her soul has departed and is returning to God to be with the souls of her dear husband, her parents, her daughter, her relatives, her friends, and the ancestors of our people. We learn in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 7, the dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. One day all of us will join our loved ones in Olam Haba, this eternal time. It's not a place, it's a time. One day our souls will be together with our loved ones, and your souls will be together with her, and your dad and your sister. We're sending along a couple of old prayer books and a Haggadah with her in the casket. It's a mitzvah to escort the body of our loved one to its final resting place, and also a mitzvah to provide respectful burial for holy books and objects of our heritage. We sent a Passover Haggadah in particular because Pesach is the time when we give thanks and we recall our ancient liberation from Egyptian slavery. We are freed today because of God's deliverance those many, many years ago. And Rose has been liberated from deterioration and illness and pain. Your memories are filled to overflowing, and we give thanks to God for this gift of long life. And even in our sadness, we are comforted and we are grateful because of the time we had to spend with her. So as you think of her, be kind, share some Rose-isms, do good things, make kreplach. If you eat spare ribs, you might want to make the spare ribs too. But do things that will bring her memory back to you fresh each and every time. And so we say with tears in our eyes words from the first chapter of the book of Job. Adonai Natan, v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach. The Lord hath given, the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Amen. Osei shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. O God, who causes peace to reign in the high heavens, cause peace to rain down upon us, upon all Israel, and upon the soul of our dearly departed Rose Innenberg. And let us say, Amen. In a moment, we will do El Malei Rachamim, and then we will go in procession to the cemetery. The family has asked if you care to make donations in her loving memory. Please contribute first to the Sue Roth Memorial Endowment Fund, care of the Jewish Federation of Cleveland. If you care to make donations other places too, I'm sure they would appreciate that, but go to Sue's fund first if you can do that. And she'll be on the Kaddish list probably at many congregations, and she'll be at the Kaddish list. She'll be on the Kaddish list at our congregation. Temple Israel Ner Tamid will say Kaddish for her for the next month, and every time the kids get together for Hebrew school and Sunday school, they'll be saying Kaddish for Rose because they all need reps on the Kaddish. And when you need to know the Kaddish, you really need to know the Kaddish. So we'll say a couple of things about Rose, and we'll say Kaddish for her in religious school too. Immediately after El Maleh, we'll be going to Mount Olive Cemetery, and then the family is meeting at the house, the residence of Lewis and Beth, until 4:30 this afternoon, and then from 6:30 to 8:30 tonight, and tomorrow from 1 to 4, and 6 to 8. And we'll do a little minyan as soon as we get back to the house. If you're not going to the cemetery with us, we'll be, when we finish here and we begin to leave, about an hour and 15 minutes before we get to the house. Please rise for El Maleh Rachamim. Into your care, O God, we entrust the spirit of our dear Rose Innenberg, Rachel Rezel bat Eliezer Vasara. For you keep faith with your children in death as in life. Sustain us that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, O God, are with us, a loving friend in whom we put our trust. You are the light of our life, our hope in eternity. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hametzeh Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Utohorim, Kezohar Harakim Azirim, Et Nishmat, Rachel Rezo bat Eliezer Vasara, Shalachal Olama, Ba'al Harachamim, Yastibreha B'Seitek Kenafav Le'olamim, Vayitzroh B'Tzroh HaChaim, Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava, v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our dear Rose Innenberg, Rachel Rezel bat Eliezer Vasara. she has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. And now they will come and give us directions for the processional. Adonai Ma'od Atah Hayita Lanu Bador Badur B'Terem Harim Yigadu V'Atkal Eretz